Screen Weens, episode 130, starring me, London, and...
Thomas Griffin.
Today we'll be talking about Ganja Hess, as well as The Sweet Blood of Jesus.
Yes.
But as always, me and Thomas are going to hang out, talk about what we've done this last week, and just kind of live life.
Yeah, because this is a Slice of Life podcast.
This is a slice of life, slice.
Slice.
Slice of life, slice.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the A24 movie Slice? Nope, no one does, because they knew it was going to be bad, so they didn't put any things around it.
When did that one come out? I do not recall.
2019, I think 2018. I was working at the theater. Chance the Rapper's the main character in it.
Yeah, I remember
and
seeing
Zazie Beetz
trailers and stuff for it.
I heard it's really bad. I'm pretty sure it was A24. Or I think they originally had it, and then they might have dropped it.
Yeah, perhaps. But, yeah, interesting. Is that what we're watching next week?
No.
But yes. So what did you get up to this week?
I watched, I was like, I should watch another Spike Lee movie. I wanted to watch a couple, but I've just been busy. But I did watch Inside Man, because I hadn't seen that before. I don't know if you've seen that one. It's got Denzel Washington, and it's like, oh, there's a bank robbery. And it's like, oh! And he's like, I gotta stop him! It's kind of like a mystery. It's like, who is it? Like, whoa, what's going on? It's I liked it. It's good.
Yeah.
Spike Lee's direction's really good in it. Like, he's a good director most of the time, I would say. And he's, like, really on his A game in that. And I think he makes, like, a script that's kind of just like, it's like, it's fine. It's like a pretty run-of-the-mill type of movie. But I'm like, but the performances in it and Spike Lee's direction make it, like, much better than it should be, I guess.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that way kind of about a lot of his work. I mean, he's obviously got those, like, few gems that are, like, super solid where it's like, yeah.
Yeah, like Malcolm X, Do the Right Thing, you know.
But yeah, then he's got those ones where it's like, decent. Had a good cast.
And I don't know, like, it was pretty obvious to me that he did not write Inside Man, and he didn't, so. That was good. And then we watched Flights of Glory. Hinatea loves that movie. I think that movie's great. Like, I legitimately think that movie's very fun.
When I was playing Rocket League this week, me and Tito were referencing that movie with the lady lumps, No one knows what it means. It's prerogative. It gets the people going.
It's provocative, man. Yeah. Yeah. I actually think that movie's like one of Will Ferrell's best movies. Yeah. And I think it's pretty consistently funny. And most of it is also not like just like punching down at minorities either.
Yeah. A lot of those comedies from that particular period did that a lot. I haven't watched Blades of Glory in like, God, close to the time it came out, but I remember liking it.
It has the same kind of vibe to me as Dodgeball, which is another movie I love. But Dodgeball, thinking back on it, I'm like, that seems like a movie that would not hold up as well, because a lot of it is like fat phobic in that movie. Like a lot. Like thinking back, I'm like, but Alan Tudyk does play a guy who thinks he's a pirate.
Yes.
He like shaves off all his stuff. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah, no, I have.
And he's like, you are a pirate. He's like, yeah. So I do want to rewatch Dodgeball because there are extremely good moments in that movie.
Yeah, I'm sure hopefully it'd be one that held up and isn't as weighed down by the fat phobic stuff.
Yeah. But. We watched the 8th episode, I think 8th of Peacemaker. That has one more episode coming out tomorrow. I think they just renewed it for a second season as well. honestly, that's, in my opinion, one of the best superhero like television shows to come out in like 5 years. Like, it's really good.
Okay.
Like, it's way better than any of the current age Marvel stuff. I would put it, like, it has a different tone than, like, the Netflix Marvel stuff, but I would put it, like, up there with, like, Daredevil Season 1.
Okay. I see.
Yeah, I think it's great. I'm excited to watch more. James Gunn, in general. And like I said, if you don't like James Gunn's, like, style and, like, humor and, like, idiosyncrasies, I understand, and you might not like it, but I vibe with that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I typically like most things I've seen from James Gunn, so... yeah, aside from the obvious, I like Super... he did Slither, right?
He did Slither,
yeah.
And I think Slither's pretty good. Yeah, the only thing I remember like not liking is on rewatch of Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I didn't really enjoy it as much.
I remember liking that one.
Well, yeah, I remember loving that. Like that, I remember being like, "Yeah, that one's better than the first." And I I understand why I said that originally. Like, and I get it. I didn't feel the same way this time. Other than that, me and Hinata finished the first season of Ozark. It's like 10 episodes. I think it gets better as the season progresses, and I've heard like they get a more consistent like footing in like the second and third season. So we'll probably keep watching it. Like I enjoy it. Jason Bateman is really good in it.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
He's like it's so funny because he's really good at like dramatic roles, but every time he plays any character, it feels like the same character thrust into a different situation. Yeah,
he very much kind of plays that like one type, but
I think it works in this scenario, and most of the time he picks things that work in that scenario. And most of these episodes he's also directed too. He directed a lot of the episodes, and it's like cool. He's putting his foot around.
Pretty interesting. Let's see.
And I think playing board games, doing that. Yep, that's mostly been it.
Yeah.
I'm just, I'm trying to get back into watching movies, but like, I don't know. My life's I had a rough night last night. Had horrible nightmares all last night. Thanks, full moon. Not the company. I meant the actual full moon.
Oh, okay. I was about to ask. I'm like, I assume you mean
Charles Band stabbed me.
Oh, jeez.
Oh. But in general, I've been feeling good about myself. I've been taking better care of myself. I stopped drinking soda again. It's been like 2 weeks this time.
Nice.
I think I'm like actually kicking it. I've jumped into just like seltzer water because I need like the bubbly sensation. But like, I feel good. I've lost like 15 pounds.
Oh,
I'm like, just like, yeah, let's fucking go. And yeah, I'm feeling good about myself. I'm feeling good about you. I'm just going to crawl over this computer and just start taking on. But yeah, what about you?
It was an alright week. Work mostly. I didn't really do a whole lot else. Some minor Rocket League and I don't remember if I mentioned this on the last podcast, but I finished The Name of the Wind, which was a book I was reading.
Yeah.
And this week I started The Witcher for Read Weens, and another book called All the Light We Cannot See, which is like a World War II book. But yeah, aside from that, I haven't really been up to much.
That's fair. Yeah. Did you watch the movies for the podcast? What movie?
What
we podcast?
Movies for the podcast?
Oh shit! We need to bring back movie ideas.
Oh yeah, I have this movie about a guy who gets stabbed by an ancient dagger and turns him into a vampire, and he like bites this woman who's his wife, and then she also turns into a vampire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. You know what a good pairing with this movie would be? Thirst.
Yeah, I was thinking that when I was watching it. I'm like, wow, this has got some...
I'm sure... I'm like, Bongino's probably seen this movie.
Probably. I would be more surprised if he hadn't, honestly. But yeah. No, it definitely feels like Thirst kind of takes, like, the concept of this movie and kind of, like, runs with it just in a different direction. But yeah. So we watched Ganja Hess and The Sweet Blood of Jesus, one directed by Bill Gunn and the other directed by Spike Lee. And yeah, I guess let's talk about Ganja and Hess.
Let's talk about it.
So yeah, I picked this movie for one reason, and that is Dwayne Jones, because Night of the Living Dead is like one of my favorite movies. And he's the star in it, and he really didn't act in a whole lot of films. Yeah. He also didn't do like a whole lot of interviews, and apparently like he always hated when people asked him about Night of the Living Dead. I assume he probably liked it better when people asked him about this movie. But yeah, so this was a Bill Gunn movie, and it was basically made because he was like, yeah, it's an exploitation, like a blaxploitation vampire movie, and everyone's like, fuck yes, Blackula 2. We're gonna cash in on that shit. And
like, but what if I make it a little funky?
Yeah, what if I made it somewhat avant-garde and just totally the complete polar opposite tone of like a Blackula. And
most like blaxploitation movies of this time in general.
Yeah. So yeah, he made it, and the producers really didn't like it, the financiers and stuff, so they were like, no. So they like recut the film, and
yeah, they recut it as like blood. What was it?
Yeah, it had some funky title.
Blood Couple, I think it was called.
Yeah, yeah. And it was basically like they just tried to recut it into like that kind of like schlocky type of exploitation.
More narratively sound as well, because this movie like does jump around a little bit. And it's a little funky in its visual and audio presentations, so they tried to make it more like mainstream. Bill Gunn's like, that's stupid, and like he was correct, because you know this movie went on to become like a cult classic and is talked about in a lot of like places now.
Yeah.
In that cut, it's not, nobody's like, let's talk about Blood Couple.
Yeah.
You know, but sometimes when you make things more mainstream, they're better.
I mean, I will admit that sometimes does work.
Yeah.
But not in this case. Yeah. So.
I think what's different in this case is like, I don't know how you would detach that, like, without just kind of feeling hollow, like the narrative idiosyncrasies and like the like strange presentation of its visuals at times and its like lack of cohesion at some points are all like conscious choices that feel ingrained in that scene. And if you take that apart, if you just lay it out like a regular, like narratively driven scene, it'll just be flat. It like won't have that beating heart to it.
Yeah, and we get a nice, clear example of that happening quite a bit in the remake. At least I feel there are definitely some scenes where he tried to go for some stuff. But
yeah, we'll talk about the remake. I have thoughts on that one, but yeah, I was like, I watched the remake first because I originally was intending to watch the original with Hinatea. She didn't end up watching it with me, but so I watched the remake first, and then I watched the original, and I was just like, yeah, it's weird because like a lot of the movie feels like a fever dream, or like it has this like dreamlike quality to it, with the like deteriorating visuals at times, like when he's like having visions of like his ancestral plane or whatever. And when it jumps to like the fields of Africa, I'm assuming, with the people, there's like a woman with a large headdress on.
Yeah.
But whenever it cuts to that, it like feels like you're jumping into a dream, but it never really feels like you're out of it. Like you'll jump back to these scenes where it's just like, hey, I'm Vampire Man. I'm walking around. I'm seducing people. I'm killing them. It never really feels like you're getting out of that dream. It feels like you're waking from a dream into another dream. Kind of like Waking Dream by Richard Linklater. Or My Dream Last Night, where I kept having nightmares and then waking up and it was, nope, just kidding. I was still in the nightmare.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, those aren't fun.
Pocket nightmares.
Like a David Lynch movie.
It happens to me all the time, and it's so bad. I'll be like, and then by the time like I get to the last nightmare, I'll be like, I don't care anymore. Just kill me.
Yeah. Thankfully, I don't think I've ever had. I've had like dreams where I realize I'm dreaming, but I haven't like. I don't think I've ever like woken up from a dream into another dream before.
It's so scary because then the first like hour of my day, I'm just like, am I alive? It's such a disheartening feeling because when that happens, the most of my day the next day is like ruined because I'm just like, do I exist? Am I here? Am I still in a dream?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, that sounds awful.
I should see a doctor.
Probably.
But who can afford that in this economy? True. Speaking of economy, I think both the Ganja and Hess and
The Sweet Blood of
Jesus do talk about like economic struggles. I actually think The Sweet Blood of Jesus kind of goes for that a little more. Yeah. I think what Spike Lee really wanted to show in that one, which we'll talk about that a little. But this one's still like, it shows like black people in power and then black people in servitude, and how they're connected. Like the narrator at the very beginning of the movie is Hess's butler, servant, like chauffeur,
and also his like reverend.
Yeah, who is the composer for the movie?
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Man, that scene in both movies, the scene where they're just like in church and they're singing that song, I think both movies, it's excellent.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
But, so it shows them in servitude, and then it shows like Hess is educated and he's well connected with like white people, but we never actually like, I don't know if we ever hear any conversations with like white people in this movie, because every time he goes up, it's like it suddenly has like narration and like it's really buzzing in the background. Mm-hmm. Which I like to think Bill Gunn was just like, nah, fuck it, we don't need those guys.
Yeah, maybe.
But he meets this guy who's another like scholar. Mm-hmm. They like talk for a bit. The scholar's gonna, I think, intern with him or something, or
something like that.
But instead, he tries to kill himself at the end of the night. Doesn't do it because he's drunk, but then wakes up and like in a blood rage and tries to murder Hess with this like ancestral dagger. Mm-hmm. But instead, it makes him a vampire. And after he does that, he kills himself. And then Hess wakes up as a vampire and walks in the bathroom and just starts drinking his blood.
Yeah. Apparently, they use tomato juice for all the blood.
Oh, really? I couldn't tell.
I know. It was super not obvious. But apparently Dwayne Jones still found it absolutely fucking disgusting. It was like gagging every time he had to do a scene where he's like fucking licking blood up off the floor and shit. Which, to be fair, if I was licking tomato juice off the bathroom floor, I'd probably be pretty grossed out too. But
not me, I'm fucking down. I'll drink real blood off the ground.
There we go.
I'm a method actor. No, just and then that fellow, George Maida, that was played by Bill Gunn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then he kind of just does his vampire stuff, kind of tries to learn to live with this. He's immune to death, pretty much. But he craves blood. He can't eat anything else. So he kind of just, like, murders people. Mm-hmm. Classic. But it never really, like, jumps into, like... It doesn't really, stay on that. That's not what the movie's about. It's about, like, his corruption and, like, the feelings of... him, and then Ganja, who's introduced, who is George Maida's wife. Mm-hmm. And they fall in love. She eventually finds the body. He turns her into a vampire.
Willingly. Like, they get married and they have a little ceremony where they go out. Yeah. At least that's the way it's depicted.
Yeah. But she's still, like... I think in both movies it kind of implies that she doesn't really believe it, like, that he's a vampire.
Yeah.
But he murders her, and she comes back, and then eventually he either feels sorry for the things he's done or he's weakened by just life. But he goes to a church and there's a big scene where they're all dancing and clapping and singing like a hymn. And they like heal him, and that like weakens him to the point that he just goes home and sits in front of a cross until he dies, pretty much. And then Ganja is very sad, but then one of the people she murdered shows up again, and they run towards each other.
Yeah.
As the cycle continues.
He also jumps over her husband, who's just like, his corpse is just there.
That's right.
Yeah. And she looks at the camera, and then, we get child choir, sing us out, give us credits.
Yeah.
That's Ganja and Hess. I like this one.
I like avant-garde movies. I like things that are weird. So I really enjoyed this movie. It definitely, like, I felt myself at times, like, falling into, like, a trance-like state because of these, like, dreamlike sequences. And I'd be like, oh,
yeah.
what the fuck's going on now? And I'd, like, rewind 5 seconds and be like, okay, I'm still in the scene, okay. But it'd feel like I'd, like, fallen asleep, and I hadn't. I'd just been like, oh,
yeah.
I'm just losing consciousness at this movie. But not in like a bad way. I wasn't bored. I was entranced. And I don't think every like thing that Bill Gunn does in this movie, I don't think they're all intentional. I don't think that he was like, yes, this will be good. I don't have a lot of money, but I will do this because of the artistic merit. I think a lot of it is that, but I do think some of it is just he was like a newer director. He hadn't done this before. I do think some of these are genuine mistakes. But I think what's fascinating is that it meshes so well with the artistic choices he does make. So most of the time, they still work.
Yeah.
I do think, and I like how, like, this movie is really patient. Its pacing is really patient. He doesn't become a vampire until, like, 25 minutes in. You don't see Ganja for another, like, 20 minutes after that. While The Sweet Blood of Jesus, which is the same runtime, it feels like they're rushing for it. Like, a lot of the time, they're, like, rushing to get to these plot points, and then they take their time. But I appreciate the pacing of this one much more.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like a lot of the dream scenes. I like that the whole movie feels like that. I like Dwayne Jones in it quite a bit. I like the performances. They're like, it's hard to like judge a performance in this because of like the structure of how performances are, because they don't feel real. They don't, like, none of the characters in this feel like real individuals. They feel like either caricatures or like dream, like memories of people, if that makes sense at all. Like, like you're looking back at someone. Which, I don't know. Like, in general, I feel like this movie's, like, fascinating to watch because of those things. Because it's like, this is not how movies are made usually. But it serves the same function, and it highlights some of these like themes and ideas better, and they're more in tune with their own theme because of it. Because this like theme of like black people using this power that's like they don't understand, that they. Was this also Ashanti? Was it also, like, it was supposed to be from, like, their homeland, right? In this one, or was that a plot thread from...
In both films, they're from, like, this, like, ritualistic, like, blood cult that were basically, like, societies that were built around, like, bloodletting.
Okay.
Or bleeding, or whatever the hell you want to call it. But, yeah.
And I think there's an interesting thing to be said by someone in a more well-informed seat than me about how diaspora like sometimes lay claim to their past, like their people's past, but don't necessarily have the knowledge to like accurately harness that power or accurately like have the capability of using like these tools because like white people have stolen that from them.
Yeah.
And I think the diaspora angle is more highlighted in The Sweet Blood of Jesus. I think in that movie he does try to make it in the present day more. But I think that's present here as well. If that makes sense. I feel like I'm also just rambling.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. Because, yeah, it's the white curator guy who, like, you know, brought the dagger over.
That's right.
And he's in both films. And I'm pretty sure he's the guy who you'll see in this one who, like, he'll show up and he's wearing, like, the fucking, like, sex party mask. Like, I don't know the name of him, but like the fucking like covers your eyes and kind of has like, I think it had a longer nose, but yeah, no, like I definitely see what you mean, and it's like, you know, we store it as like information, and information is usually like fucking behind like paywalls and all sorts of things that, you know, the people can't like get access to. But
well, and especially in like look at when this movie was made, like 70s, where the fuck are they going to get this information? Like it's in government buildings, it's in archives, but like common like poor black people are never ever going to have that access to information, and even like the richer black people still don't. Unless they use all their resources. And even then, what was it, 73 most of the time? Even to like an uneducated black person, a black person that white people may deem as like, oh, the friendly one or something, because that's, you know, in the 70s, that's how it was. They still probably won't have the privilege it would take to be able to like acquire these things. Yeah, like, in general, I feel like this movie just gives you a lot of questions, lots of things to talk about, lots of things to interpret, and I want to watch it again. And I say that a lot about the avant-garde movies that we watch, and I never end up doing it, but I'll watch them again eventually. I got like 80 years before I die, hopefully.
Yeah.
Or never. I'll become a robot.
There we go. Yeah. Also, because we haven't really mentioned it thus far into the review, shout out to Marlene Clark, who plays Ganja. Yeah, she also did a fantastic job in this movie. And, yeah, fucking... I don't really have a whole lot more to say on it, but... Yeah. I really like the end scene where he's just like chilling in the shadow of the cross before he dies. I really like that one.
I think that one thing this movie has over like, or different than a lot of vampire movies, is that religion in vampire movies is a weapon. It's not a cure, it's a weapon. And in this, it feels more like a cure, like he's becoming himself again. Yeah, it's his salvation, which, you know, in vampire movies it's weaponized salvation. But it's nice to see it from this angle where it's like, this is healing me. I'm dying, but I'm becoming me again. Like I'm becoming who I wanted to be. I feel bad for my mistakes. So it just has a interesting, more meaningful tone to it, I guess, than most vampire movies. Yeah. Nah. I really... even though I'm not, like, a religious person at all, I do like the religious themes in this. And, like, the overcoming, like, addiction aspect of it, too. Because both of these movies, they're like, I'm an addict. And, you know... Obviously, you could take... you know, you could jump pretty easily into like the war on drugs and because even before there was the war on drugs, there's always been a war on black people. There's always been funneling drugs into low income areas and to drive up crime. And Bill Gunn knew that. Bill Gunn seems like a smart guy. He did a lot with his budget. Yeah, I really want to watch that experimental soap opera thing you did, Personal Problem.
Yeah,
or I'm trying to find it.
It sounded really interesting. But yeah. You would give this 8 out of 10.
I would. I think you're sitting at a 7.
Yeah.
I'm a genius. Let's talk about Spike Lee's The Sweet Blood of Jesus. Funded by Kickstarter.
And starting with a Michael Jackson dance.
Funded by Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I read through the Kickstarter.
Oh, did you?
Why am I on Kickstarter? Because I was on Kickstarter before there was Kickstarter. Whoa. He's like, Malcolm X, I had to pre-kickstart that when I ran out of money. I'm like, what does that mean? So.
Huh. But yeah.
I don't think this movie's bad.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad.
I was expecting much worse from like the things I had heard and like the reviews. I'm like, this is... Yeah. I feel like most people that don't like this movie haven't seen the original, which is fine, like, or they don't know it's... And I do think it's significantly worse than the original, but I still don't, like, liked it fine. I thought it was...
I think it's kind of like... I don't necessarily want to compare it to, like, the scenes from a Marriage-like adaptation, because I think that there are some stark differences in, like, how you could take those two, but it's kind of close where it's like, yeah, this version set in the modern day, it kind of like shoehorns like some more like modern topics into it that, you know, rests well upon like what was already kind of established in the original, just more modern. But I feel like it loses a lot of like the fucking like more kind of like human feeling side of it. And I feel like that can apply to both of these. But yeah, I don't think it was particularly bad. There are some changes there. It's like, okay, yeah, I see what you were going for there. I don't know. I think it was kind of having seen the original.
Maybe because I watched it first, but I was like, I think the things that I disliked about it are, I think it looks really ugly. I think it looks too clean, which I think the whole movie feels artificial.
I think that's the low budget.
But in general, I think this movie, like, is fine. I like the artificial feeling of it. It feels kind of like an interesting counterpoint to, like, the, like, dreamlike quality of the original. This feels like a manufactured dream, which I think works fine for, like, the more modern day setting. But I just don't like the visual presentation. I think that's one of my bigger gripes with the movie. I really don't like the soundtrack, especially compared to the original movie. I think the original movie has a kick-ass soundtrack. But besides, like, the church scene in this one near the end, I think the soundtrack doesn't mesh well, and it doesn't, like, make an interesting, like, dissonance with the visual presentation. Like, it doesn't fit, and it doesn't fit in a way that's annoying. Like, there are ways that they could not fit and make a interesting, like, juxtaposition to everything going on in the scene. But it doesn't do either of those things. It's just kind of not good.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't really like kind of the breakneck speed they want to introduce certain things at the beginning. I think the pacing's off in comparison. I think they kind of find their footing later on. Those are like my main gripes of the movie. I like what they do with a lot of the things, at least as trying to, like, honor the original while making something of its own, because it follows some of the plots quite closely, and it follows some of the like themes, and it follows some of the like presentation pretty closely. But instead of like just mumbling and like voiceovers for like different conversations, instead you have just snippets of like conversations about race and about class, about stuff like that, and like that makes sense as a Spike Lee movie. And I think that it works in that. Like, it works just having little snippets of these things. It introduces, like, these questions like Ganja Hess does in a more, like, a way less subtle way. But I still think it's it's effective enough. And I like the performances in this movie. I was looking at the main guy. I really like the main guy. I think it works for the type of movie it's going for. He's like not in very many things. He's in a lot of like TV shows. Spike Lee should bring this guy back for like a movie that people like. Because I'm like, I like this. I like this guy. Rami Malek plays the main character's servant, butler, friend thing.
Yeah, I didn't really care for his performance in this.
He's
always got that like awkward like air about him, but like this felt like before he had ever refined it.
It's funny because it wasn't that long ago.
2014.
I mean, he'd been in Night at the Museum.
Oh yes.
Yeah, no, I would get it. And it honestly just looks like he's about to laugh in like every scene. He looks like he's about to just start laughing.
Yeah.
Which is like kind of charming at times. I like the one part where he's just like, "Do you need the red wine now?"
Oh yeah, he gets real worked up about that.
But other than that, it was fine. But I think the main character, and I think the person that plays Ganja is good. I feel like Ganja in general is like the highest privileged like character in both of these movies, at least like money wise. Not gonna like obviously women of color are extremely low on the privilege wheel, but she comes from a place, I think, of great wealth, or at least she married into great wealth. But she constantly talks down to, like, the servant in this one, like, more so than in the original.
Yeah.
And in the original, it feels like maybe, like, some of the time she's even joking around, but she's just kind of mean in this one.
Yeah, and then this one has the added caveat of her killing him at the very end, and it's like, bruh.
Yeah, why'd you do that? And he doesn't get to come back to life. I'm like, maybe he's
trying to help her out.
No, and instead she has, like, a love affair, a lesbian love affair with a random woman and kills her, and she comes back. Was she just a random? I can't remember. Was she from the beginning, or?
The character?
Yeah.
No, I don't think they showed her. I think they introduced her as an old friend of Hess's.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I'm like, did we see her early? Okay.
No. I don't believe so.
But yeah, I think this movie's good enough, like.
Yeah, it's all right. I don't think it necessarily deserves like all the fucking tomatoes that gets thrown at it, but yeah, I don't know. Middle of the road. It's a remake. It's not a particularly great one, but it's not a particularly awful one. But yeah, if I was to recommend somebody, if you want a more memorable experience, watch the original, because it's like super weird and out there tonally. This movie feels like it takes that same concept but kind of like makes it more accessible and grounded. Which is funny. I think this movie does what like Blood Couple set out to do, but in a more respectful like way, because it's not like... Maybe. I don't know if I'd say what it set out to do, because I think it set out to make money. Yeah. No, you're right. That's not necessarily what I meant. But like, I get what you're saying in terms of making a more accessible vampire movie for audiences who want a vampire movie instead of an avant-garde piece about like addiction and redemption. Yeah. But I think at the very least this keeps those themes intact. It might not portray them in as interesting of a way, but I think it's Spike Lee feels like he's at least trying to honor the original. So. Yeah, I felt his effort. Yeah. His Old Boy remake? Maybe not. Which is funny, because this is the movie he made right after Old Boy. He went remake to remake. Yeah, you think he would have... Haven't seen Old Boy, but I want to. He's like, let me remake a movie that less people have seen, and maybe they'll like it. But yeah, you would give this one a 7. 6?
Yeah, I'd give it. I think you're sitting at a 5?
Yeah, I'd give it a 5.
Okay. But, like, yeah. It was an... Yeah, this movie's not, like, what I'm going to watch again. But I thought it was an interesting, like, thing to watch. I do like watching remakes, like, right after or right around an original. I do think, like, it's an interesting exercise, even if the remake is worse or better or whatever. Have we watched any remakes that have been better? Let me think. I liked Stoker more, I think.
I did not feel that way.
That's fair.
I mean, we haven't watched it for the podcast, but I like the Suspiria remake more.
That's fair. King Kong.
King Kong, yeah.
I think is better than either of the originals, or I mean the 39 one or the 76 one.
Yeah, I think that there's a case that like the 39 one is better in the sense that it's definitely a more influential and ambitious film with its special effects, but in terms of like actual movie,
I think 2005 is so good.
Yeah. Oh, Peter Jackson.
And it's not better, but I think that Harakiri remake is good.
Yeah, it's a good Harakiri remake.
The original's like so fucking good though. And honestly, I'd make an argument, like I could see the argument for the Slumber Party Massacre like movie at the very least.
I would see the argument. I wouldn't agree with it.
That's
I could see it.
You're like, oh, if it's not old, it's not good.
We're clearly forgetting the superior fistful of dollars to Yojimbo. I'm just kidding. The Yojimbo is like top tier movies ever made, and Fistful of Dollars is not.
Doodoo cock. All right. Next week, don't worry, Thomas. We're watching another movie with Dwayne Jones.
We are?
Yeah.
Oh!
So we're watching 2 movies by black women, directed by black women. First is going to be 1982's Losing Ground, which we talked about last week for a bit. That also, one of the main characters is played by Bill Gunn. And that's directed by Kathleen Collins, who died like 5 years after that movie was made of like breast cancer. And then we're also going to be watching 1996's The Watermelon Woman by Cheryl Dunye? And also starring her. I've heard great things about both. We haven't watched a movie in this chunk of Black History Month directed by a black woman, so I'm like, let's finish off with 2.
Fair.
Because in general, I feel like we don't watch enough movies directed by women, and obviously, there are more male directors, but fuck off. We're making the effort here.
We're trying.
Let's do it.
We're trying.
So yeah, we're gonna watch those, and then we'll have a deep dive, and then we'll have something special.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you all for listening or watching or just kind of being here. Thomas is going to shoot you. Anyway, talk to you later. Tell your grandmother about the podcast. We love the oldies. If you're born before 1995, you are certified old. You're going into the retirement home. We're taking your pension. Bye.